Hello. I need to turn up my volume to make sure that you can hear me. Okay. Can you all hear me? Please type in the chat box if you can. Perfect. We're still pretty early. I am going to get Ileana actually on so that everyone can see both of us and we can, just chat a little bit and get to know each other. If you guys want to say where you're from while people start logging in, then we will be good. Hi, Jane. Hi, Julie. Hi, Debbie. Julie, you're from Toronto. Debbie's from Toronto as well. Ah, there we go. I'm trying to get Ileana on.
Hi, I'm here.
Hi. Perfect.
Hello.
We can all see each other.
That's great.
How are you?
Good, good.
Perfect. So we are quite early, so I'm just going to wait a little bit. I usually try to wait until about 8:05
Okay, yeah,
for
that makes
people to
sense.
log on. And yeah, this is the last. I've done 2 webinars this month, so it was back to back last week and this week. And it is the last one for the month.
Yay.
I'm quite relieved. I mean, I don't do much work for the webinars. You're the one doing the work. But, I still feel that level of commitment. So, yeah, yes, I am relieved. This is the last one for the month. It might be the last one for the year, just so everyone knows. But we will be putting out a search for more webinar hosts for 2020, as well as we're going to be looking for blog contributors for 2020. So have a lot of work to do in December,
Mm-hmm.
but we'll get it done.
You're also in Toronto, right?
I am in Mississauga, yeah.
Okay, nice.
Not that far off. And we're planning all our events for 2020, everyone. It's a slow process, but I'm getting there, just trying to narrow down dates and venues because I like to have all my dates set in stone by the time the year ends for the following year. So we'll be opening up a little at a time in terms of vendor applications and sponsors and all that stuff. But I'm just waiting to finalize some details before I do that because I want to put everything out at the same time so I don't have to, keep going back and forth. So if anyone's been following us over the past 7 years, normally by the middle of November, we would have already released all our events for the following year.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's very organized.
I have to be. I have to be. So I'm getting there. There's a little bit of pressure. Okay, people are logging in, which is good. This is great. Let's see. Jan is also from Toronto. There are a lot of Toronto people here today. Is there anyone who's not from Toronto? Anyone? Usually there are a couple of ladies who are from Manitoulin, and I always say I want to go to Manitoulin. Anyone not from Toronto? Hi, Kelly. Are you from Toronto as well?
Yeah.
See, yeah. That's okay. There's nothing wrong with the GTA. At least we can all, relate to a lot of things today. There was no additional snow on the ground.
Yeah.
Be thankful for the sunshine we got today. Oh, hi, Judine. Hey. Windsor. Haha. We have someone who's not from Toronto. It's good. So yeah, we can relate to some weather things today. Sometimes I'm like, oh, it's so nice out. There'll be someone who's like, it is a blizzard here. So Yeah. So I know you
Oh,
all,
there's somebody from London.
pardon?
Somebody from London.
Oh, Perlette, you're from London, London, Ontario. That's still
Right.
good. London.
Yeah. Still
You gotta let
there.
us know. Okay, so we're all Southwest Ontario, we can say. Belleville, that is a little bit east, right? Yes, Belleville is east. Yeah, Judina, I did shout out that you were from Windsor. Ottawa, this is
Yeah.
great. You guys just had, I was watching live today, the cabinet swearing in today. There was that in Ottawa. Well, it affects all Canadians, so you might want to go check out who are the members of the cabinet. Stony Creek, that is a place I know well because 40 Creek is in Stony Creek.
Yeah. I did my thesis on like branding a winery, and I used to spend a lot of time in the bench region too. It's so
Ah,
lovely. I love the Ontario wine industry.
fun region.
Yeah.
Nice. That sounds like a really good thesis.
Yeah. You get to taste some wine.
Yeah. Oh, look at that. Wine. I'm not drinking wine at the moment. I'm drinking good old fashioned Pellegrino.
Mm.
Okay, so what I'm going to do, I know I'm sitting here rambling, and I I would like to say that I try to make this a little bit formal, but I'm not a formal person. I am who I am, and this is how I present myself. Sometimes fortunately, sometimes unfortunately. But for those who are new to this, I'm Dwania. I'm the founder of Canadian Small Business Women. We do try to host webinars such as these and bring in experts in their field so that they can, teach us all. It's not teaching you, it's teaching all of us, because I'm included in this. A thing or two that we can apply to our business. And tonight's going to be all about branding. And that is something that I find a lot of entrepreneurs usually they have it wrong. I was trying to find a better way of saying it. There's usually that misrepresentation. People just think, oh, I'm going to rebrand. And that just means slap up a new logo. So you want to really understand what branding your business is, whether you're branding your business or branding yourself. And it also does go hand in hand, but you want to have a good understanding of it. And what better time to do it than now when you're going to be planning for the new year. So you want to make sure that you get your, all your branding elements in order, but you want to also make sure that your message is going to be great for 2020. So enough of me, and I am going to hand it all over to Ileana. I'm going to run her deck on my screen because you don't need to see this all the time. You need to see her lovely face as she is teaching us what she is. Feel free to type any questions you have in the chat box. I will be trying to track that. Ileana, you will see exactly what I see. So
Okay.
you'll see the messages as well, but I will try to keep track of that. And yeah, let's have some fun on a Wednesday and, learn something. So let me just open up the presentation. I might not be the best when it comes to running. I'm really good at running a deck for PowerPoint. Might not be the best at running a deck for Word, but I'm going to, not Word, geez. It's, yeah. What I meant was PDF, but we will make this work. So I'm going to share my screen. Please let me know if you do not see my screen. I'm going to start sharing now. Yes, are we good?
Yeah, I see it.
Perfect. I'm going to see if I can do page view and we should be good. Okay, please let me know if the layout is wonky for you guys, but it's all yours.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, so I I am a brand expert, and I'd love to introduce myself a little bit, which would be my next slide. And throughout the presentation, I'd love for you to tag me if you're on social media, or feel free to reach out to me after. So I started my career in the marketing industry, so creating coupons and small brochures, presentation decks, and things like that. which is not as rewarding for a designer. And also it's a lot of waste that we're creating in all this marketing. Afterwards, I moved on to advertising. So I worked for a small advertising company for some time, followed by a jewelry design company. And then I decided, listen, I love dimension and I love environments and how they interact with us. And so I moved into kind of another area of design, which would be theme parks and the entertainment industry. So creating really wholesome experiences. And lastly, I also worked for an interior hospitalities company. So I decided after that, after about 10 years of going around the industry, to just start my own company. And it's been 5 years now. I really focus on helping companies create that silent handshake. So that's like that first impression to present themselves, whether it's launching a new company, whether it's navigating through a rebrand, or maybe it's just creating those memorable environments that really bring everything together. And now just move on to the next slide. So jumping right in, I want to share with you my approach and methodology to successful branding. And it starts off with many times me just hearing, I want a quick logo like now. And I understand, people need to register the name, they need to get the trademark down. There's so many things as a business owner you worry about. And the logo is just that last element, just slap it on there, we need something. But I, of course, would love for everyone to understand the importance of a good foundation for both the business and the effect it's going to have in the world. And so it's important to launch with a complete toolkit for the success. And I know many people have a disappointing experience in the creation of their logo. And so I'd like to go over strategies to better understand designers and to better understand business owners, so that really we're not just asking for that little logo. And so the interest should be in creating a comprehensive visual identity, because this visual identity is going to be welcomed into a world overloaded with media. And it's that really small first impression, which is really big though. It's a small business card, but or maybe it's an introduction, or maybe it's a website. It seems small, but it really makes a big difference. It's that silent handshake that we're not talking about, but is there. And so in reality, any new company should be investing in their brand to set the tone of how the company is going to be perceived. Now we can move on to the next slide. And so it begins with a basic brand strategy to pave the way. And I oftentimes help my clients through with this. Oftentimes they come up with a lot of parts themselves, but I focus on areas that maybe, coaches and business advisors are not, as keen on, as I believe that they're important to representing your company visually. And so in this brand strategy and keeping everybody on track, you're really getting the designer, the marketer, and business owner, everybody to align and understand the challenges in the industry, understand the direction the business is going to take. And so we examine the industry and the way the competitors are presenting themselves. So it's great for you to see what companies are doing, and first of all, what's making them unique, and how are they appealing to the customer? Like, what are they doing? Like exploring what the competition is out there, because you can take an approach to blend into the industry and try to really mimic them in their approach and in their visuals and even colors, or you can really stand out and be that rebellious edge that's very different in the industry and really go against the stereotypes. And so only after understanding strategic aspects, really can a designer truly come up with an intelligent solution for your company's representation to really distill the essence of what the company stands for. And so throughout my presentation, I always talk about visual identity. And I just want to clarify here that if you think of Nike has a word mark, and a word mark is the Nike written out in bold italic letters, very modern, very narrow. And also it has a logo, and the logo is that little swoosh. And oftentimes companies have both the word mark and the logo, and they are both visual identities. And so I'll just generalize and say visual identities for my presentation. But upon creating a visual identity, maybe you can move just now to the next page. Upon creating the visual identity, this full ecosystem is developed. And so it includes rules around how you treat the visual identity, how much space should you leave, what backgrounds not to use, as well as size. As logos and all the visuals get smaller, they can be simplified so they're easier to see. Like on a browser, you have that little favicon. You want it to be for a smaller scale. Of course, there's the fonts that you should use. Usually there's 3 color palettes, as well as patterns and iconography, photography styles, all these things, all these visuals, they create a language around your company. And so, yes, the logo is important, but if we were to slap our logo on every single item, it becomes so convoluted, it becomes so boring. We want to have a bigger visual language. And so also, as a lot of us are Canadians here, the Bay, right, the Hudson's Bay, it has the writing of the Hudson's Bay in very elegant serif writing, very thick. It also has that heraldry icon, which is their logo. But have you noticed recently they have this pattern that they're introducing all over their sweaters, many of the products, and it's this yellow, white, red, white, blue, white, you know, like this really nice pattern. And now this visual language, without you seeing the logo of the Bay, you know this is the Bay, right? It's created this impression for their viewers without having to slap their logo and be loud. And so the subtlety creates a visual language, and it creates recognition, it creates a sense of surprise, and it's the subtlety that appeals to people a lot of the times. We can just move on to the next slide here. And so I want to talk to you about key areas of the brand strategy and the core values, those guiding principles, also known as. Those are really important parts that I need to know for clients. And I think any business needs to figure out, because they lead the way the business is perceived. Since the visual identity embodies the essence of the company, it is these feelings, these values that need to be represented. And so it's a belief system that guides the business actions. It unites a team, it defines its brand. You can just go to the next one. And so to give you an example, my brand, my core values, those guiding principles are curiosity, in a sense that I believe problem solving, problem framing, those are essential parts of what I do for my clients. And I love that part. I love the curiosity of learning. Also creative and imaginative, as well as logical. That's part of my process. I'm a very logical person. I like for there to be a structure and a strategy behind what I do. And of course, I want that to be appealing to the right people. And as well as boldness. A lot of the projects I take are challenging the ordinary. They're bold, they're loud. And I think that's important. And also igniting inspiration, right? I want my work to attract the right people. And so through having these values, I am able to present myself in a certain way. And so these guiding principles, these core values, they help guide such decisions. They help attract, maybe it's new talent, maybe it's clients. And it also helps you stay consistent. And the next slide, I just want to share with you, maybe you can screen grab this, a quick exercise that you can do to better define those core values for yourself. And they change throughout time as we grow, as the industry changes, as our competitors change, our target audience maybe changes. And so it's important to revisit these maybe every 3 years and go through them and really narrow down on what the company stands for. Because this is how you're going to evaluate if your visuals are doing what they should be, if your copywriting is doing what it should be. This would be kind of the backbone. And in my next slide, I'm just showing an exercise I do to define the target persona. It's usually best not to just do demographics, right? It's great if you know the age, location, gender, and all these things, but also it's very important to understand the aspirations and the goals of your target. It's important for you to understand the motivations that they have. Maybe it's incentive, fear, achievement, growth, their pains and gains. I'm sure you've heard the importance of knowing that, and how and what they buy. Also, what are their favorite brands? It's important to see what are they looking at every day? What do they appreciate and value and love? Because you can take away from that, you can take inspiration from that and involve that in a way through your brand. And also, if you know their personality, that's great, right? Values, attitudes, behaviors. If you can distill all these things, it helps you understand the kind of person they are. And so next is really the brand personality. So that's kind of the third big step that I'll go through before moving on to really the visual parts. And so the brand personality is a set of human characteristics associated with the name of your brand. And so usually your customers can relate to that. This is the persona that they're attracted to. This is as if your company was an entity. And oftentimes, if you're a solopreneur, you are the company. It sets the tone for all the communications that will follow. And so my next slide, I just show a way you can go about discovering your brand personality. And so, for example, if you were to say an analog, right? So my company is like Tesla. So it wants to question the ordinary. It's about being tech forward, being sleek and simple and modern. That could be one way. Recently, a client told me this is like, one example of their brand personality and what they want to achieve. Or maybe it's an animal, right? Maybe it's a fox and it symbolizes mischief and playfulness and cleverness and has a charm. It has this mental responsiveness, awareness. So here also you can go with personification, right? Maybe you see your company as a teenage man who's in high school, and maybe this is who they are and this is how they will appeal to your target audience, as well as personality. So whether it's somebody funny and playful, maybe it's somebody more serious. And all these words, they really speak a certain visual language. If you have a company that whose personality is playful, then it'll represent itself differently than a company whose personality is more serious and more assertive, structured and fluid. And so there's a lot of contrasting personalities that you can try to generalize in order for you to better reflect the company. Here in my next slide, I just wanted to share a fact with you that the human brain processes visual information so many times faster than text. And so you having that first communication piece to give off to your audience, to your target persona, or who it may be, even just a regular person, their perception of you is so influenced by this tiny segment of time. And so next, I want to talk to you about principles of design, because this is the way you can judge what you have right now and evaluate it better. So this is a little bit of design school, but in reality, there's seven of them, and I'll just go through them briefly. They're, in reality, balance is the one to the top left. And so balance, if something is balanced, it feels comfortable and it feels wholesome. There's symmetrical balance, which is that peace and stability and predictability, but there's also imbalance. And imbalance can be unnerving, it can be edgy, it can be daring. And so it creates different emotions as you look at your visual identity. Next, references to the size, so the scale and the proportion. So relationship of one element to the other element. So our eye is always comparing it, whether it's the size, the weight, the location, what it may be, whether it's the foreground or background. It has this dynamics are created by the scale and the proportion. Next is focal point. And so really this is how your eye is able to be attracted in a certain area or another. It creates this emphasis, and it has a hierarchy. And oftentimes we have multiple focus points within our logo, right? You might see one area first, and then there'll be another section and smaller details that come in later on. There's this sense of viewing order, this sense of control. Afterwards, there's patterns. So our brain, it looks for patterns, it creates expectations. And so patterns can create movement and rhythm. That's what's born from them. It gives an impression maybe for change or for action. It can add excitement, it can add drama, or it can be, very stagnant and safe. Next is unity. So this idea of oneness, right? This peace, this belonging, everything is looking like, it's born to be there. While variety gives a sense of experimentation and curiosity and multiple options working together. And the sixth one here is is an essential one, which is color. And I'm going to talk to you about it a little bit later on. So as we go through the next slide, I want to show you a few logos and how you can evaluate it using these principles of design. So for example, the one to the left, and actually I should mention here that all of these are black and white, because back in the day, you know, black and white was important, as a lot of us don't have colored printers. A lot of the times you need to print a letterhead and it needs to work in black and white. But in reality, you've seen your visual identity in black and white would give you a lot more understanding of the shapes and the design before any color is introduced, because color has so much emotion and adds a new level. But even judging it on this black and white, you know, part is important. And so here, the logo to the left, it has a sense of asymmetry, but there's an asymmetry because it's not symmetric on both sides, but also there's a sense of balance and a sense of control. It's very inclusive, right? It has this idea of circles and it has these harmonious curves. Overall symbolism is really important. So here we have this idea of a labyrinth maybe, or I also heard later on somebody tell me that it also is a rune, and it's made by the letters N and D. It's also about agility and having a personalized feel. Then also there's a middle central point, and that point is like a focal point. It talks about being an aim or a target, solving problems with a focused tactical approach. And all these words, all these, you know, descriptions really talk about also the personality of the company and what the company stands for. Then the one to the right, it has a sense of balance and this yin-yang harmonious look. Also, the sense of scale here is important, as the two fish that are rotating, they're breaking out of the frame. So it has this emphasis and this edginess to it. When it comes to symbolism, koi fish are known to represent advancement, as they only grow when they're in the right environment. And so these organic curves that are flowing with their fins, it gives this agility, this sense of dynamicness to the company. And again, these are all part of the values of the company, being agile, being dynamic, taking care of, you know, the service that this provides. And then the one to the very right, this one has a lot of letters in it. And so it also, so these letters have a variety, sense of variety, right? There's all these shapes coming together. And so it creates a sense of change. You also see the two arrows, and they almost look like a fast forward button, as the E later on creates the dash. And so it creates a movement. There's the arrow, and then what? So then it has a sense of change. It adds movement. So in reality, all these ideas that I'm talking about could be racing inside a person's head as they get your business card, as they see your website. There's a quick evaluation of, even at a very basic level, just the feeling. Is it harmonious? Is it welcoming, or is it more edgy? Is it very modern? Is it very safe? Like all these words, they come into one's mind as they visually see the visual identity. And so on the next slide, I'll go over a little bit of the color palettes. And so usually a company would have one or two colors that would lead. And here you can see a lot of the colors, they have so much meaning to them. For example, if you think of McDonald's, there's the red, exciting, you know, bold and hungry. And then there's the yellow, which has a lot of energy and speediness. And so those two balance each other off well. But I should really note here that, you know, there's a red that's really bold and really bright, but there's also a crimson one, and maybe there's a lot softer one. So as we add blacks with our color, and as we add white to our color, it changes it as well. So there's a lot of nuances that can come with all the descriptions here. And so it's great to evaluate yourself. So what colors are you using right now? And maybe you need to adjust them to fit the brand values, to fit your persona, to appeal to your target better. And on my next slide, I'll go over also supplementary colors. So oftentimes we have a leading one or two colors, but afterwards, what do, right? We can't just keep on repeating them. We then add to our color palette these secondary colors. And there's ways you can go about it. So you can do as you look at the color wheel, right, there's the warm colors and the cooler ones. So one thing you can do is do complementary colors. So these are on the opposite sides of the color wheel. And so they usually create sharp contrast. They have a sense of pop. And also overusing those can be kind of tiring, right? Your eyes constantly, you know, attracted and attracted and attracted. And it could be confusing, it could be overwhelming and tiresome. And also analogous colors. So these are colors that are next to each other on the color wheel, and they're very harmonious. So usually one would dominate, one would support, and one would accent. They're very pleasing to the eye as a combination. Also there's triadic, so those are more evenly spaced on the color wheel, and again, they're dynamic. They're not as sharp in their popping contrast as a complementary, but if you think of Burger King, right, that has the yellow, the red, and the blue, and they all work together in a very dynamic logo. On my next slide, I'll go over a few more combinations that I've used recently with clients. And so you can see the one to the very top. It has this sunny orange, and it has also burnt orange next to it, and a maroon, right? And it has, and those shades, they add energy and warmth, while we have the more determined values of our company would maybe be seen through grays and blues and cooler tones that are a little bit more subdued. Then the palette to the right, the one that has luxurious, premium, and trustworthy. So we have the soft pink, complemented by a dusty one, complemented by a deep purple and gray. So the luxury can come from the soft contrast of the soft pink and the dark purple, and also gives that sense of premium as we use the darker purple more. The trustworthiness would come from the gray as being a little bit more boring and subdued. And then the next one where you would see elegant, warm, and driven. So here we have the soft tones of beige and the blues, as well as the warmer ones, which are the two purple shades. And so it's elegant in a sense that it has the softness, but it has the warmth through the darker shades, and it's also very driven by the contrast. Next, the one to the right, we have this fun, motivated, curious. It's almost like a kid's, candy. It's fun because of the bright colors. There's not as much darker ones except for the dark blue, but dark blue gives it a sense of motivation. So the darker shades give us a little bit more of seriousness, like motivation, like driving force, like being smart. And then there's the yellow and this bold green, and they give a sense of curiousness. And I'll just go over maybe one more. We have the serious, dependable, safe. So we have these a little bit more subdued shades. We have those beige colors as well as the dark blue. They can feel a little bit boring. They can feel a little bit almost like a senior, but they're very safe. They're dependable. And of course, the primary ones at the bottom, they're just so bold, and each one has so much character. And usually after, I'll just go to the next slide. Afterwards, I would look into fonts because fonts, usually within a company, you'd have a font for your word mark, maybe another one for the tagline. And then as your communications come in, like brochures and flyers or whatnot, you would want to use certain fonts. You don't necessarily have to use, and oftentimes you don't use a font like your logo because you want to keep that to be its own, to be unique. But you can pick ones that complement it, or maybe ones that add a different character. Usually you'd have a headline font, a sub-headline font, and then your body copy. So similar to this little diagram here, typeface is written, if it was written in one font, that would be your headline font. And then where you see Helvetica, Baskerville, this will be your sub-headline fonts, followed by your body copy, which is the small writing. Usually 3 fonts are a good way to go about your brand, but 2 is also fine. So again, they can complement your logo and word mark, or they can add another layer to your brand. And so each font has its own history, its own personality, and also it has its own sense of readability and legibility. So here there's 4 fonts. And the first one, Baskerville, you can see the T and the Y are written in Baskerville. And so that font was developed for a newspaper back in the 1700s. And it's supposed to be elegant. It has these serifs that make it look so smooth and elongated. But also it's very readable. As you read the line, you have the serifs that carry you to the right, to the right, to the right, and you can read much quicker. Then the font afterwards is Helvetica. So I'm sure some of you might have seen the movie Helvetica. There's this great documentary about it, but it's essentially a sans serif that's so modern and so clean. It was created almost to rebel against all the fonts that are ornate and very delicate and very, very, you know, bold and big. And so this is very simple. It's very modern, it's very clean, very fundamental in a way. Then the one to the right, we have Rockwell, and this is a slab serif. So the serifs here are blocky, and they also provide a sense of safeness and strength because they are supporting the letters so boldly. And the typeface to the right, that's Cottonwood. So this is a very decorative one, right? And it's ornate, it's complex, it's almost psychedelic. And so a font like that, you would never want to write, you know, all your body copy in. You want to just have it as the headline, just enough letters not to confuse our audience, but it can give a lot of character if that's the character needed. And so I'll just scroll on to the next slide. So here, showing you back the logos initially. So the word mark is set in a modern sans serif font here, the one that says North Data. And so you see there's some interruptions of the strokes. And so that gives it a minimalist look. And it has clean lines and smooth curves. It has a bit of a soft demeanor, but at the same time, it has these sharp edges. They're called terminals, and they talk about precision. The letter R here actually really connected with both partners of this company, as in Cyrillic letters, it also is an R without that stroke at the bottom. And overall, the color conveys a feeling of winter, right? It has these grays and blues, while in the communications, you can see on the right, like there's a presentation slide sample, there's a warmer yellow. And so that gives a more positive look, and it complements the cooler blues and creates a sense of contrast and a sense of standing out more. But at the same time, it's not, because they're, you know, on opposite sides of the color wheel, the blue and the yellow. If I'm to use yellow too much, then it'd be too tiring. But here it's just used a little to highlight, to add. On the next slide, I'll just show you the other logo we were talking about with the koi fish. So here, the font of tips the scales. It's inspired by a modern font. It has smooth characters and strokes. It's a very unique font, right? It has such a unique character. You hardly see it. You know, you'd recognize it if you knew which one it is. And also these characters, because they're so rounded, they're accommodating their letter ends, right? They're not sharp edges there. It's very friendly, and it's also very dynamic. And so here the color palette is more split complementary. It has, you know, the opposite sides of the color wheel. It has both the orange and the yellow on one side, and then it has more of the red and the purple. And it has a sharp contrast, right, when it's balanced with this dark blue. And so here you can see on the right, iconography-wise, it adds a lot of pop and a lot of attention as we use these colors to stand out on the dark blue. That can, you know, get people's attention in the right place if need be. And so on my next slide, I just want to go over, so secondary visual language. And I went over it a little bit here with these two examples, but really we're looking to set the tone for your company through different communications. So it's about elements coming together to bring depth, to bring meaning, to add to the story of the brand. And oftentimes that can be outlined in the brand standards. And so below I want to show you brand standards, for example. So here you can see the logo in both black and white, whatever background is needed and however it's used. This logo is just black. And so the colors of the palette really adds a lot more character. So the guiding principles of this company is being efficient, being simple, teamwork, And so through the colors, you can see that the innovation and visionary part of the character of the company is reflected, right? It has excitement, it has contrast, it has this daringness. We also are using like a gradient line throughout. You can see it just above the black and the white swatches. And so this gradient line gives a sense of speediness and dynamics. The fonts are modern. So we have this Oswald font, and oftentimes Google fonts is a great way to go about looking at which ones you should use, because they're oftentimes available through a lot of platforms and they're free for you to download. So for example, the font here, the Oswald font, it's very modern, it's efficient, and it's for a headline. And it complements the logo. It's narrower, and afterwards we have the subheadline font, Lato, and this one is more rounded and more human, more friendly. And so because the word mark is so narrow and modern, it's nice to have a little bit of humanity through the writing. And so here we're introducing it with the fonts as you go and you're reading through. In the brand standards, we also talk about spacing, because the space around your logo, right? You want it to be surrounded by a lot of clear space from all the sides, and that would create legibility, and it will give a sense of impact. By isolating the identity, you let supporting graphics, speak their own language without going into the visual identity. And so showing you here is the M of the letter from the logo, and oftentimes you want to take an element from your logo as you're scaling it up and down, so you always have an element that's a reference for you to know how much space to leave around it. And so you should just equally leave it all around, especially in a block of logos. You probably have seen, like, when there's sponsors and there's logo, you want there to be a good amount of space around each one, so that each one can stand out and they're not all next to each other, just fighting. And we can go to the next page. And so here you can see a little bit of, defining the secondary visuals. So here we want, whenever there's photography, to have a deep, serious filter over it. And so we have this dark blue filter and a gray color, both of them working together. But we talk about the efficiency, excitement, which are some of the values of the company, which are brought in through the iconography and the colors we have here. So they're supposed to feel innovative and interactive. A lot of the icons this company uses have a sense of dimension to them, as you can see that Target looking graphic. And so that adds a little bit of edginess and a little bit of, interaction to the company. And on the next page, I just want to show you like elements coming to interplay. So here we also took from the logo, we took this fast forward button and we made it a little bit more obvious through a pattern. And on the next page, you can see how it interplays on the business card to add a little bit more interest and to add a little bit more context to the company. And the page after that is just a little bit of the website. So here we show how, let's say, this gradient stroke is used in the box for interaction. We show how this dimensional graphics come through to add a little bit of intrigue, a little bit of excitement, and a sense of modernity. And so on my next slide, I just want to remind you of a few key facts about branding consistency. And so consistency in branding is so important. And it turns out, I was looking at statistics, that it does increase the revenue by a fair amount. Just being consistent and helping people remember through that, because repetition, consistency, that builds trust in people's minds. And also that aesthetic, supposedly they caused 52% of customers not to buy from a company. So there you go. And on my next slide here, I want to talk about evaluating your consistency. And so here are some questions you can ask about what you've got so far, what your visual identity, your brand is like. So do you think the fonts, the colors, the layout, even written messages, what do you think those say about your business? And, evaluate yourself, see if there's consistency, because that's what we're looking for. We want the colors, the fonts, the layout, the writing, everything to speak to the same brand personality. Would a prospect client or a new client connect to the brand's visual language? So based on what you know about what brands they love, based on, you know, the person's own persona, like would they connect with what they see? And also, maybe does your brand stand out? If you see the competitors, are you that vanilla, or do you have a character? Like, do you stand out? Do you stand for something? Is your brand's visual language consistent across all touch points? So here it's important to see what are your main, for example, 3 modes of communication. Oftentimes it's the business card, it's even your email signature, it's brochure, it's your website, and how do they all look next to each other? When you see one and the other, do they all feel like they're part of the same brand? Do they all feel like the visual language is consistent? And do your visuals capture the essence of what you do and what you stand for? And so this is really looking at the visuals you have, starting from your visual identity, from your brand, and taking it down to all the communications. And so when you're reaching new heights and you go bigger and you have more profitable clients, the appearance of your company is one of the main deciding factors in this, you know, ruthless battle in the souls and minds of your customers. So next here, I want to just show you one more case study. So this company right at home, I had the director of marketing approach me, and you know, he said we're looking to have infographics done, and he had done a little bit to the left, the example, but he knew that he needed a sense of sophistication and he needed a sense of consistency, because you can see the communication to the right is a different visual language than the one to the left. So right at home is well recognized and established brand. So, you know, changing the visual identity, the logo or the word mark was really not on the table, but there's other ways you can refresh. And so on the next slide, I just want to show you that, you know, I started with the brand standard. So I wanted to see what is out there, what are the rules. And really, I had to put it together because, you know, as the company grew bigger and bigger, there wasn't really any good standard. And even if there was, it was not, you know, available for people to see. And so I needed a refresh. And so the goal here is to bring the marketing materials in line with the current brand aesthetics. So here we refreshed the color palette. It was really important to add a warm color to help also the visuals pop a little bit more. And so we have this yellow contrasting on the dark purple, but also having the softer gray and the softer purple, they can add layers of neutrality. Also, the fonts were important here, and so we introduced a headline font called Laura, and that one has a tribute to an old, classier font, but at the same time, the body copy font is very clean and modern, this Roboto font. And on the next page, I just want to show you, you know, some of the examples of what we ended up doing here. Expressing the brand values of being reliable, being fair and honest. And, you know, honesty can come from also this white space, a lot of white space and the sense of modernness. Also efficiency. So the sharp contrast, it talks of speed. And then you have the supportive parts of their values, which you see through the warmer shades of yellow. And the next slide, there's just a few more communications to bring consistency. And you can see this graphic elements, these edgy boxes. They're really based on the right at home pitch of the logo. And so it's great if you can find graphics that can interplay from your logo. And so on my next slide, I just talk about change and adaptation. And so again, auditing your brand if you can every 3 to 5 years is ideal. And you can look for changes in, you know, the service and the product. Maybe there's growth in the location, maybe there's customer size, demographics change all the time. So that could also be something going on. Industry trends are changing. Of course, culture changes, customer behaviors change. And so it's great to just keep that in mind and always remember to keep your brand consistent and keep it, don't let it be that old person that never changes. If you're willing, if that's who you want to attract, then you could be that very traditional brand. But based on your target audience, you wanna pivot, you wanna adjust, you wanna slightly refresh. Yeah, and that's about the end of my presentation. I'd love to take any questions if.
We do have some questions. Can asked, how do you brand professionally as a new startup and not break the bank?
I think it's great if you provide, first of all, you provide the designer or who you will work with this persona, like your brand persona, with your values, and make sure that they know to reflect that. Because oftentimes I've been on projects where you, let's say as a new designer, you just start doing something and start thinking about symbols, and you don't necessarily think about a deeper strategy behind. So as you approach a designer, you want to give them a lot of context. You want to also talk about who is your target audience. You want to talk about who is your competition, so that they know the visual language of the industry, and they, in a way, you're doing a little bit of research for them, so they know to put more depth behind your visual identity. And so once they do that, I think it's also important to ask them to give you brand standards. So that would include maybe just basic ones that includes, spacing around your logo, colors, secondary colors, fonts, at least that gets you going. You could also ask them, if you ask them to even design one application for you, like your business cards, then they might create a good aesthetic that you can then reinforce in your many communications.
I have a question.
Yeah.
So I was looking at the color slide that you showed, and it had, all the identifiers based on the colors. But then there are also, the colors of the year.
Yeah, there are so many trends. You're right.
Yeah. So how, if I'm looking to rebrand, or if I'm a business who's just looking to get started in brand, what am I supposed to really go to? Am I supposed to go through this whole branding exercise and pick the colors that identify what I feel represents my business? Or should I go with the trendy option?
Well, I don't know. Honestly, like color of the year, like this entire Benjamin Moore thing is a bit of a marketing,
It is.
scam. In reality, I'd say that, styles, they fade, but you wanna create a good consistent image. And so, yeah, sure, maybe red is not, like bold red is not really in right now, but it creates a certain emotion in people's minds. And so even if you're appealing to the trendy folks, you could introduce a little bit of the color of the year here and there as like a secondary color if you see it fit well with your brand. But I would say just think about the long term, like what are the emotions behind the colors, because they don't change like the color of the year.
Right. Jan is asking, how do you rebrand as a photographer? Her logo is black and white, and she's not sure if she should rebrand or just keep on trucking.
Sorry, you cut up. If she should rebrand or she should.
Oh, she said she's a photographer and her logo is black and white, and she's not sure if she should rebrand or just keep on doing what she's doing.
I think then evaluate your black and white logo and see if it visually represents your values. So if your values are about being very human, or being, whatever your values are, just see if it visually feels like that. Like, does your logo feel in those values that you as a company stand for? And then honestly, black and white is fine. A lot of companies want to go black and white just so that they're not tied to a single color, and they can, introduce it as they wish. And as a photographer, I think it's a great idea to have a black and white logo, because then, you can slap it on whatever image, whatever color, and you don't worry about it. It's in a way very universal. And if you have those secondary colors coming in through some communications, that's fine too. You can change them up if need be. So yeah, I think it's just about evaluating it in the roots the visual of the logo? Like, is it balanced? Is it symmetrical? Should it be? You know, based on your values, what are the design principles at play?
I had something I wanted to probably ask and say. It might be just a comment, not a question.
Mm-hmm.
So I realize, at least it's working for me. You know, you get your logo done, and in the beginning, you're not sure where this logo is going to be. You're not sure, you know, you think business cards, some marketing materials, you know, website, social media, but you don't know what other places you're going to put this logo. And it might not
Mm-hmm.
fit everywhere that you want to put it.
Mm-hmm.
And I have to say, with the branding exercise I went through, I got my logo broken apart into pieces, and then I also got the complete logo. And that is something that a
Okay.
lot of people should really look into, because it can be very helpful when you're creating certain documents and you don't want your full logo there. It could just be a component of your logo that still represents you.
Yeah, and that's sometimes how, like, you can do your graphics, right? If you have your communications and you maybe take just a small section, a curve of your logo, just like even the right at home example, you just take the pitch of the roof and you repeat that in your, you know, that can also create a sense of cohesion and harmony with your main visual identity. But also, as you're saying, it's great when your logo, so first of all, it's great that you don't just have a logo, but you can also have a word mark. So then, you know, if, let's say, a round logo doesn't fit what you're doing, then you have the actual writing. But
Mm-hmm.
also sometimes you can have a vertical version of your logo and a horizontal one, right? And they could be the lockup of both the logo and the word mark together.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's great to have those options as you're developing your visual identity, to just have more variations
Yes.
for whatever use. But at the same time, very consistent variations.
Right, right. Like, there's
Yeah.
still, like, I know with my logo, it's the, I'm going to try to pull up a card so that everyone can see. Oh, wait, I got to move this. I'm trying to do a little bit of everything at the same time. So, for example, I have my logo with, you know, the name of my business and a tagline. I have the woman separate, I have the leaf separate, and I have them in all my brand colors. So I can use the woman separate, the leaf separate, as, like, you know, a watermark on a document if I want. So it
Mm-hmm.
still represents me. And then I also have the logo with, like, it's like circular and all this stuff. So it's nice to have options, because you never know when you will actually need it. Like, I have the circular version there.
Mm-hmm.
So you never know
Yeah.
when you'll need it.
I think it's ideal when it's unique, like the little illustration of a woman that you have, like that's quite unique and memorable. So that, you know, that could be an element that has its own life. I don't know if just the leaf would be enough to talk, you know, to represent your company. But you know,
Because
the
it's
writing also
Canadian
is great.
maple leaf, everyone would use it, right?
Yeah. So it's great. Yeah, if you're pulling apart elements, then just make sure that the element by itself is unique enough and
Mhm.
feels like your brand.
Yeah. Gemma has a question. So she said she will have two websites. One is a web platform, and the other site is mostly for her services. Should she keep both in the same complementary color scheme?
I think so. So if you want to differentiate them still, you can have just the lead color be different. So let's say if your color palette is gray and dark blue and a bright yellow, let's say one of the sites can have more of the grays and a little bit of the blue and the yellow, and another one can have more of the blues and a little bit of the gray and the yellow. So you're still keeping consistent in your palette, but you're still differentiating the two if you'd like, so that, you know, people don't get confused. Oh, which platform am I on, this platform or this platform?
Okay.
And also, sorry, I should say here that if you have the blue, let's say lead, in your color palette, let's say of the website that has the leading blue, you could introduce a softer blue within the same look to just deepen and have a little bit more variety than just these three colors. Versus in the gray, you can have a bolder gray and a subtle gray. So then you're keeping within the same palette, but you're just adding a little bit of a variety, so that, you know, you have more colors to work with on a site.
Kamisha asks, what are your top hacks for rolling out a rebranding process to your audience? Good question.
My hacks. Okay, so
I know if you're rebranding. For me, when I rebranded, I did put out a vote, like a poll on social media. But I mean, I narrowed it down to who I liked first. And then I put it out there.
Oh, who you liked? Sorry, are you asking people what they think about your company? Is that what you're saying?
No, for my rebranding, like when I did my new logo, I narrowed it down to the top 2, and then I got everyone involved. But if you're a new company or a new business, how do you roll out your branding process to your audience?
So you're a new company and you've rebranded. How do you communicate that? Right? That's the question?
Yeah.
Okay.
Like the best way to communicate your top hacks.
I think it's great to, yeah, as I do rebranding exercises with clients, I oftentimes do a survey and I ask them to give me what their quickest thoughts are on seeing this within a split second. So let's say seeing, and it's great in your survey to not just have your branding, but also convolute it with some other logos so that they don't exactly know what they're doing. So it's great to ask them, first of all, to involve them in the process, your audience and your target, and then tell them maybe the story, like, listen, we were so and so and now we have become so and so, and so we want to make sure that we reflect that visually. And next, I think it's great to also introduce maybe new colors, educating them about what's happening, but also introducing it in some stories, maybe through social media, so that when it comes, it's not just like, bang, oh, that's a new brand, I don't know who they are, but you just kind of go through maybe a month of using your current maybe visual identity and introducing, let's say, the new colors and saying, hey, listen, there's change coming. Next, introducing something else, slowly, little by little. Yeah, so just so it's not a shock, and you've gained their trust and you continue to consistently keep on going. But I think the survey is always great, to just do a survey initially, and even you can ask other questions like, oh, it's great to use your competitors in the survey too, and see what are the thoughts of people when they see the competitor versus you.
That's true, because when it comes back to your slide when you were discussing not just viewing your brand from your perspective, but how does it look from your customer's perspective?
Yeah.
That's great. Well, everyone, it's 9 o'clock and we've had a lot of good questions. And I feel like I have some homework to do.
Great.
Which is great. Yeah, it is great, especially, trying to make sure that language is really good for 2020, because we want to do better every year. So we want to make sure that we're communicating to who our customers are. And we have the slides that's going to help us identify who our customers are and their habits. So we need to really dive into that. This is being recorded and this will be on our YouTube channel. I will send the link out to everyone who registered so that they can watch this. And Ileana, I will also send out your contact information so that they, can find you. And I thank you so much for this informative webinar. I know I learned. Great. I'm very appreciative.
I'm glad. I love better design, and I love people being strategic and being happy with what they have and what they do. So yes, I'm glad to be doing this.
Strategic. I think my quote of the day today was, be strategic. Don't feel like you have to know everyone. Don't feel like you have to be everywhere. So now make sure you're strategic in your branding as well.
Yeah.
Have a great night, everyone. Thank you so much, Ileana. And if there's anything that you have coming up or anything that you would like me to share with everyone, please email it to me and I can send it out to everyone.
Okay. Yeah, sounds great. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, everyone. Have a great night. And yes, I'm going to look out for everyone's new branding come 2020.
Yeah. Or refresh, refresh is fine.
Or refresh to the brand, yes.
Yeah, you don't have to be that drastic.
Spruce it up a little bit.
Yeah.
All right, have a very good night, everyone.
Thank you, bye.
Okay. Bye.